Welcome to Scoli Sleep Stories. Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable. Let the day soften around you, and settle in for a calm documentary made for curious minds. If these stories help you rest, learn, or simply enjoy a quieter part of the day, please consider liking this episode and subscribing to the channel. Now, when you are ready, let us begin. Chapter 1: The City Beside the Euphrates. The Euphrates catches the last light of evening in long bands of copper and violet. From the path beside the river, you watch the colors move slowly across the water. They bend around the hulls of narrow working boats and gather in the ripples made by poles and paddles. The current carries fragments of reed, fallen palm fibers, and faint reflections of the western sky. Along the bank, damp earth darkens where jars have been filled, animals watered, and cargo lifted ashore. Beyond the river lies Babylon. At first, the city does not appear all at once. It rises by degrees from the level plain. There is a line of earth-colored walls, a distant gate, the upper edge of a temple, and here and there, the silhouettes of date palms. Farther within, taller structures stand against the fading sky, softened by dust and evening haze. Their outlines are clear enough to guide the eye, but not yet close enough to reveal every ledge and brick. You walk toward them without hurry. It is the 6th century before the Common Era, during the Neo-Babylonian period, when Babylon is the capital of a wide empire. The city stands in southern Mesopotamia, in a land that will one day be called Iraq. Yet nothing beside the river feels like a page from distant history. Nets are being folded, bundles are being tied. Someone steadies a basket on one shoulder, while another person rinses river mud from a wooden pole. A boat is secured for the night. A jar is lifted carefully onto dry ground. Babylon is not only a place of rulers and monuments, it is a city of households and workshops, of laborers, merchants, officials, craftspeople, priests, and scholars. Children learn familiar routes through its lanes. Bakers prepare grain before dawn. Boat workers read the movement of the river. Scribes press signs into clay. Families mend garments, store food, light lamps, and listen for returning footsteps in the courtyard. For all its importance as an imperial, religious, administrative, scholarly, and commercial center, Babylon is also a place where ordinary days gather quietly into years. The river helps to shape those days. In this age, the Euphrates passes through Babylon. It divides the eastern and western quarters, yet also joins them together. Its water supplies the city and supports canals, gardens, and fields. Boats carry goods from settlements upstream and downstream. At landing places along the banks, jars, timber, baskets, grain, and other cargo pass between the water and the streets. The river also influences the shape of the city itself. Roads and lanes turn toward it. Buildings approach its banks. The sound of moving water becomes part of the life of nearby neighborhoods. Over many centuries, the channels of great rivers shift. Silt gathers, banks change, and water finds new courses. The Euphrates seen at the modern archaeological site will not necessarily follow the precise route it follows on this evening. But here in the city before you, the river belongs closely to Babylon, and Babylon belongs closely to the river. A low working boat passes near the reeds. Its cargo rests beneath woven coverings, and the person at the stern guides it with steady, practiced movements. There is no need for haste. The boat glides onward and leaves a widening seam across the reflected sky. In the distance, where the river enters the more densely built city, a crossing links one side with the other. Archaeologists in a far future will discover bridge piers that once helped connect the two halves of Babylon. They will continue to debate the bridge's exact appearance and date. From where you stand, there is no need to settle the question. You see dark shapes near the water and small figures passing across the river. Their pace is unhurried. One figure pauses, another moves on, and then both become part of the gathering dusk. The breeze carries the scent of wet clay and reeds. Date palms stand along cultivated ground, their trunks marked by old leaf scars. Their crowns move gently above irrigation ditches, gardens, and low buildings. The palms offer fruit and welcome shade in the long heat. Now, as evening settles, Their fronds make a soft, dry sound in the cooling air. Beyond them, the city seems to grow from the same earth. Most ordinary buildings in Babylon are made from sun-dried mud brick. The material begins with soil, water, and plant matter. It is mixed, pressed into molds, and left beneath the sun until firm. In a region where stone and good building timber are not abundant, mud brick is practical and familiar. It can form thick walls that soften the heat of the day and help preserve the coolness of night. Mud brick requires regular care. Wind, rain, flowing water, and time gradually wear it down. Walls must be repaired and replastered. Sometimes they are rebuilt. One generation may raise a room upon the traces of another. Old bricks return slowly to the earth, and new bricks are shaped from the same broad plane. In this way, Babylon is both enduring and continually renewed. Baked brick is different. Fired in kilns, it is harder and more resistant to water, though it requires more fuel and labor to make. Builders use it where strength and durability matter most. It appears in monumental structures, paving, drains, wall bases, and places exposed to dampness or flowing water. During the long reign of Nebuchadnezzar II, extensive rebuilding transforms parts of Babylon. Temples, palaces, defenses, gates, and ceremonial roads receive careful attention. Some baked bricks carry stamped royal inscriptions, recording the ruler associated with the work. From this riverside path, however, the inscriptions are much too small to see. What you notice instead is color and texture. There are dusty brown walls, pale areas of plaster, darker foundations, and occasional fired surfaces that hold the remaining sunlight in a different way. The warmth of the day rests within all of them. As you draw nearer, Babylon's walls become easier to distinguish. They do not rise suddenly from the horizon. Instead, each step reveals a little more. Inner and outer defenses surround important parts of the city. Gates control the main approaches, and towers stand at intervals along the brickwork. Within these boundaries are palaces and temples, residential districts, ceremonial roads, working areas, and the tall stepped form of a ziggurat, a temple tower built in receding levels. But it is only one part of a much larger, lived-in landscape. The inner city covers several square kilometers. Even so, no certain number can be given for all the people who live in Babylon. Much later estimates will vary, depending on how scholars understand the limits of the city and the density of its neighborhoods. It is enough to know that Babylon is large, complex, and filled with many kinds of daily life. Much of what future archaeologists learn will come from the grander places. Palaces, temples, fortifications, gates, and ceremonial streets are often made with durable materials and maintained by powerful institutions. They leave clearer traces beneath the earth. Ordinary neighborhoods, workshops, market spaces, and commercial districts are less completely understood. Sun-dried walls soften and dissolve, reeds decay, wood disappears, streets are resurfaced, rooms are altered, and one modest house may be rebuilt many times. So the Babylon before you is fuller than the remains that will endure. There are shaded courtyards behind plain walls. There are storerooms, workrooms, kitchens, and places to sleep. There are people carrying water, shaping clay, preparing food, checking goods, and closing doors against the deepening night. The city contains ceremony and scholarship, but it also contains small repairs, familiar meals, quiet conversations, and the simple wish to return home at the end of the day. Between the river and the gate, your path joins a broader road. Dust raised during the afternoon is beginning to settle. A small cart travels ahead at an even pace, its wheels turning with a dry murmur. Two donkeys follow behind, carrying balanced loads and woven bags. A family walks near them, speaking softly. Farther along, several workers return with tools resting across their shoulders. No one pauses to admire Babylon as a legend. They are going home, delivering goods, completing errands, and passing through familiar entrances before the night grows deeper. The first lamps appear near the river landings. Each is only a small flame, sheltered in a simple vessel of clay. From a distance, the lights seem to float beside the darkening walls. More lamps will soon be lit in courtyards, shops, temples, and guard rooms. For now they remain scattered points of amber, gentle as the earliest stars. You leave the nearest reeds behind. Their whisper slowly fades beneath the sounds of sandals, wheels, and hooves. The open breath of the Euphrates still touches your back, carrying coolness from the water. Ahead, the brick walls release the heat they gathered beneath the sun. The gate is clear now. It has not appeared all at once, but has emerged naturally as the place where the road and wall meet. People returning from fields, riverbanks, and nearby settlements move toward it in a loose, quiet stream. Animals lower their heads as they walk. Cartwheels settle into familiar tracks. A guard stands beneath the shadowed brickwork, watching the ordinary passage of evening. You join the others. Behind you, soft water moves through reeds and around waiting boats. Before you, the entrance to Babylon opens into cooler shade. The scent of river mud gives way to warm brick and settled dust. The river breeze grows faint beneath the walls, and little by little, the sound of hooves replaces the sound of water. Chapter 2. Through the Evening Gate. The gate receives the road without hurry. For a little while, you move at the same gentle pace as everyone around you. The walls rise on either side in the warm earthen colors of the plain. Their surfaces are no longer bright beneath the sun. Evening has softened them into shades of clay, dust, and shadow. Heat still rests within the brickwork, but beneath the entrance the air is cooler, touched by the breath of the river behind you. This is not the grandest entrance into Babylon. It is one of the more ordinary ways through the wall, used by people returning from nearby fields, canals, workshops, and settlements. Here there is no formal procession and no shining display prepared for a festival. There are only the familiar movements of evening. Sandals brush the ground. A wooden wheel turns slowly. A donkey shifts the baskets tied across its back. The donkey ahead of you carries 2 deep reed baskets. One appears to contain onions, their pale skins faintly luminous in the dimness. The other is covered with woven cloth. It may hold grain, tools, or something gathered beside the canals. The animal walks patiently, placing each hoof with care. Its handler keeps one hand near the load and speaks in a low voice whenever the baskets sway. Beside them a small cart passes beneath the gate. Its wooden wheels give a long, quiet creak. The cart is narrow enough for the road and carries bundles of reeds, along with several clay vessels packed between folded mats. The driver guides it around a worn place in the ground. For a moment, one wheel rises slightly, then settles again. A few sheep follow behind, their wool holding the fine dust of the day. A goat pauses near the wall, interested in a dry stem, until a young handler gently turns it forward. Farther back, another donkey bears empty jars that knock softly together with every step. Cattle may also pass through entrances like this, but tonight the animals nearest you are smaller and easier to guide along the narrowing road. Horses are known in Babylon, but they do not dominate this ordinary scene. The donkey is the more familiar worker here, steady beneath baskets and sacks, and well suited to the patient labor of roads, farms, and markets. A gate attendant stands within the shade. Another figure rests near the wall, watching the passage without interrupting its rhythm. City entrances are controlled civic spaces, important to the order of urban life, yet there is no need to imagine an elaborate examination of every returning household. The attendants observe the movement around them. They make room where the cart must turn. Their presence quietly marks the boundary between the open road and the streets within. One attendant exchanges a few words with the cart driver. The conversation is too soft for you to hear, and soon the cart moves on. A porter carrying a bundle across his shoulders passes in the opposite direction. He steps aside for the animals, waits beneath the brickwork, and then continues toward the river. You cross the line of shadow. Outside, the road was mostly packed earth, pressed firm by feet, hooves, and wheels. Inside the entrance, the surface becomes more carefully laid. Brick appears beneath the dust. The change is subtle, but your sandals can feel it. The ground is flatter, and each step returns a firmer sound. Babylon is crossed by roads of many kinds. Some are broad enough to carry carts, animals, goods, and groups of workers. Others narrow as they enter residential quarters, winding between long walls and courtyard doors. Major routes extend inward from the city gates, connecting neighborhoods with markets, quays, temples, and administrative buildings. A gate is therefore more than an opening in a wall. It is the beginning of a path into the life of the city. Several of Babylon's gates have names associated with deities. To pass through them is to move through practical architecture, but also through a landscape shaped by civic and sacred meaning. Divine names are part of public life here, Even so, not every passage beneath a named gate is ceremonial. Most footsteps are simply going home. A woman carrying a shallow basket walks a little ahead of you. Two children remain close beside her, one holding the edge of her garment. A workman follows with a wooden tool resting across one shoulder. Fine dust marks his feet and the lower edge of his clothing. From another lane comes a group of porters carrying ropes and folded cloth rather than heavy loads. Their day's work seems to be finished. The sounds change as you proceed. Beneath the gate, hoofbeats were gathered and deepened by the brick walls. Beyond it, they spread into the streets. The creak of the cart grows softer. Somewhere nearby, a wooden door closes against brick with a heavy, settled sound. Voices pass behind a courtyard wall and fade. Ahead, where one road meets another, the view opens briefly. The last daylight touches a more formal route deeper within the city. A patch of glazed surface catches the light and holds it, blue against the surrounding tones of earth. Glazed brick is a prestigious decorative material. It does not cover every house, building, or wall in Babylon. Most of the city carries the natural colors of mud brick, baked brick, plaster, timber, and reed. The gleam of glaze is all the more noticeable, because it is reserved for important architecture. In the northern inner city is the celebrated gate associated with Ishtar. In its later, richly decorated upper phase, the Ishtar gate used blue glazed brick. Relief figures emerged from its surface in measured rows. There were powerful bulls, and the dragon-like creature called the Mushushu, associated with Marduk, Babylon's chief god. The Ishtar gate connected with the processional way, a formal road leading toward the sacred center. During the New Year festival, this route had a special ceremonial and religious purpose. Relief lines decorated walls along part of the way, and the section later uncovered by archaeologists had baked brick paving set with bitumen, a dark, tar-like material used to bind and protect the surface. Such a road carried festival movement and civic meaning. Yet between ceremonies, even a monumental route returned to the rhythms of daily life. Dust settled on the paving, sandals passed over it, workers moved along its edges, and shadows lengthened beside decorated walls. Your own entrance is quieter. It does not need blue glaze or rows of lions to be important. Through this modest gate come baskets of food, jars of oil, wool, fish, reeds, tools, and news from beyond the wall. Through it pass porters, herders, small carts, and people bound for boats or fields. The city depends upon these ordinary crossings repeated from one day to the next. Babylon is large, but it does not live apart from the surrounding land. Grain comes from cultivated fields watered by canals. Dates come from palms growing where soil and water permit. Sheep and goats provide wool, milk, and meat. Fishermen work along the river and its connected waterways. Boats carry bulky goods with less effort than small carts can manage over land. Roads and gates complete this network, joining the water routes to streets, workshops, storerooms, and homes. As you walk farther from the entrance, the gate behind you becomes a framed patch of evening sky. For a little while you can still see the pale light beyond the wall. A porter crosses through it and becomes a dark outline. Then a donkey follows, its long ears distinct against the fading horizon. The attendant remains near the side of the passage, a still figure amid the steady movement. No bell announces the change from day to night. A lamp has been placed in a shallow niche near a doorway. Its flame is small, fed by oil and protected from the breeze. Another lamp appears farther down the street. Their glow does not reach very far, but it marks thresholds and familiar turns. Those who live here know the uneven place near a drain, the corner where a wall projects, and the doorway with a woven mat hanging beside it. The brick beneath your feet is still warm. Along the lower walls, however, the first coolness is collecting. It rises from shaded ground and from narrow passages where sunlight departed earlier in the day. The open breath of the Euphrates no longer reaches you directly, but water remains present throughout the city, in jars and drains, in canals and wells, and in the faint dampness that sometimes gathers near a quay. The road divides. One branch leads toward quieter houses. Another continues toward workshops and places of exchange. From that direction come the last sounds of sellers completing their work. Pottery is nested together. A wooden cover is lowered over a container. A few calm voices settle upon a price. The animals that entered beside you begin to separate. The sheep are guided into a side lane. The cart of reeds continues straight ahead. The The donkey with the two baskets turns toward a courtyard door, where someone waits to receive it. For a moment, the covered basket gives off a dry, sweet fragrance. Perhaps it holds dates after all. You follow the street where daylight is thinning between the walls. Dust hangs low and golden in the remaining light. Somewhere nearby, sesame oil warms in a small cooking vessel. Its rich scent mingles with warm bread, onions, and sun-heated brick. The market has not quite finished its day. Its voices are gentler now, and its shadows are long, but a few stalls remain open beneath awnings and reed mats. Beyond them, lamps begin to glow, one by one, as Babylon settles into evening. Chapter 3. The market begins to close. The first lamps appear modest beside the last light of the sky. Their flames rest in shallow clay vessels, each fed by a little oil and a twisted wick. One lamp stands beside a basket of onions. Another glows near folded cloth. Farther along the street, a merchant has placed his lamp upon an overturned jar, where it casts a warm circle over the goods that remain. There is no single orderly hall containing all the trade of Babylon. Sellers may gather beside a street, at the edge of a courtyard, near a gate, or close to a landing where boats unload from the river and canals. The precise arrangement of commercial streets and stalls in 6th century Babylon is not fully known. A permanent bazaar of uniform booths cannot simply be assumed, yet trade belongs naturally wherever people and goods come together. Here, between brick walls and shaded doorways, a small cluster of sellers is finishing the day. The market-like street is lively, though never hurried. People move around one another with the ease of long practice. A porter carries a sack over one shoulder. A woman steadies a jar with both hands while its stopper is checked. A child waits beside a stack of reed baskets. From a waterside lane comes the faint scrape of something being drawn across packed earth, followed by the soft knock of pottery, placed carefully beside pottery. Nearest to you are dates, gathered into dark, glossy heaps. Some lie loose in shallow baskets. Others have been pressed together for easier storage and transport. Dates are a familiar food in southern Mesopotamia, sweet and sustaining, easy to carry, and useful in many households. The seller lifts one date and examines its skin in the lamplight before returning it to the basket. The dry, honeyed fragrance is the same scent you notice near the gate. A customer points toward a smaller basket, and a few quiet words pass between them. There is no performance in the exchange. Bargaining is plausible here, as it is in many places where people trade, but it need not be a fixed ritual of raised voices and sweeping gestures. These two people simply consider the amount and its value. After a moment, the customer nods. Beside the dates stands a broad measuring vessel filled with pale barley. Its surface has been leveled by the flat edge of a wooden tool. Barley is one of the foundations of Babylonian life. It can become bread or porridge, and it can be used in brewing. It may be stored, distributed as a ration, exchanged for other goods, or used to settle an obligation. Grain is commonly measured by volume. There is no need to count every kernel, nor always to weigh the entire amount. Instead, the merchant fills a vessel of an understood size. He pours barley into a smaller container. The grains make a quiet, steady sound, like dry rain falling upon reeds. He levels the top, checks it, and empties the measure into the customer's sack. A few grains cling to the rim. With one careful motion, he brushes them in after the rest. Not every exchange requires silver. One household may provide grain, wool, oil, labor, or another useful good. Workers connected with a large household, temple, estate, or other institution may receive rations. A familiar customer may take something now and settle the obligation later. Much depends upon the people involved, the quantity, and the purpose of the transaction. Across the lane, wool lies folded beneath a woven covering. One bundle is creamy white. Another carries the muted brown of the sheep from which it came. Wool can be weighed before it is spun, traded as yarn, or worked into cloth. Textiles require many patient stages: washing, combing, spinning, weaving, and sometimes dyeing. A folded piece of fabric may therefore hold within it the labor of many hands. A seller runs her fingers along the edge of a cloth, then folds it inward to protect it from dust. Near her feet are baskets plaited from reeds. Some are round and deep, suited to carrying food. Others are flatter, useful for sorting grain, drying ingredients, or holding small household objects. Reeds are familiar materials beside the waterways. They may become baskets, mats, screens, cords, and many other practical things. Even the writing tool of a scribe may be cut from a reed, although that quieter work waits farther along the street. At the next doorway, pottery stands in groups. The clay surfaces are buff, reddish, or gray. Some vessels have narrow necks for liquids. Some are broad bowls. Others are sturdy cooking pots, darkened by use. Pottery is ordinary enough to be found throughout daily life, yet every vessel represents a sequence of work: choosing clay, shaping it, allowing it to dry, and firing it. A potter taps the side of one jar gently with a finger. The vessel answers with a small, clear note. Satisfied, he wraps it in a reed mat. Unsold bowls are nested one inside another, with scraps of fiber resting between their rims. A sealed jar nearby contains oil, perhaps sesame oil, widely used in cooking and lighting. The sesame plant produces small seeds rich in oil, and pressing them requires time and effort. A customer does not need to take an entire jar. A measured quantity can be poured into a smaller vessel, just as grain can be divided according to known measures. There are seasonings too, though only a few remain uncovered. You see cress and dried herbs, along with onions and legumes that may be added to a stew. Bread rests beneath a cloth to keep away the dust. Simple tools lie upon a mat, in all, a small blade, a wooden handle, and a metal fitting whose edge catches the lamplight. Metals are valuable and may be weighed with care. A useful tool can be repaired and returned to work, rather than casually set aside. Closer to the waterside lane, fish have been laid upon clean reeds. They may have come from the Euphrates, a canal, or another nearby waterway. Some have already been sold. The remainder are being gathered into a shallow basket before the market closes. Their seller rinses his hands from a small jug. Water runs dark across the packed ground and disappears into the dust. For a moment, the air carries the scent of river water and damp reeds. Then the seller folds the mat, lifts the basket, and prepares to take it indoors. At a low table nearby, you see a different kind of transaction, one settled with silver. The silver is not a round coin stamped in the manner familiar to much later centuries. It is a small piece of metal, irregular in shape. The merchant places it in one pan of a balance. In the other he sets weights, adding and removing them until the beam comes to rest. A shekel, in this setting, is first of all a unit of weight. It is not necessarily a coin. Silver can be measured in shekels and in fractions of a shekel, and a small piece may be cut or weighed for a particular payment. What matters is the measured amount of metal. The merchant bends close, not with suspicion, but with care. Silver is too valuable to estimate casually. When the beam settles, both people look at it. A few words follow. The silver changes hands, and a wrapped bundle of wool is lifted from the table. The balance sways once, after the pans have been emptied. Then it becomes still. Yet not every resident regularly handles silver. Household production supplies much of daily life, and goods pass among relatives, neighbors, workers, employers, merchants, temples, and estates in several ways. Barley may answer for something received. Oil may be promised. Wool may be delivered later. Some goods are provided as rations. Other exchanges rest upon credit, with payment expected at an agreed time. The trading place is therefore not quite like a modern shop, where every object carries a fixed price in coin. Here value may be measured by volume or weight. It may be settled in silver or in goods. It may be provided now, promised later, entered as a debt, or remembered as part of a continuing relationship. Grain and liquids are commonly measured by volume. Wool and metals may be weighed. A household may exchange what it produces for what it needs. Trust matters, and so do familiar relationships. For a handful of onions, a little bread, or a small basket of dates, no clay tablet is necessarily required. The exchange can be immediate and simple. One person gives, another receives, both continue homeward. For a larger quantity of grain, a delivery expected later, or silver owed after a season, memory alone may not be enough. Such arrangements can be written into clay. The record may include the people involved, the amount, the date, and the witnesses. Written contracts and witnesses are especially important when an agreement is substantial or will not be completed at once. The tablet does not replace trust. It gives the agreement a form that can endure after spoken words have faded. Around you, the street is becoming quieter. The barley seller draws a cloth across his measuring vessels. The woman with the textiles, ties her bundles with cord. Oil jars receive stoppers and coverings. Pottery is carried through a doorway, 2 pieces at a time. A reed mat is rolled slowly, from one end to the other, releasing a faint scent of dry grass. The remaining conversations are low and indistinct. A measure is confirmed. A delivery is remembered. A greeting is offered to someone passing homeward. No voices rise above the others. There is only the soft murmur of business reaching its natural end. One customer adjusts a basket against her hip. Another folds a piece of cloth over a small purchase. A porter sets down his sack, rests for a moment, and lifts it once more. The lamps now seem brighter than the sky. Their glow rests on jar rims, basket handles, folded wool, and the smooth faces of brick walls. Footsteps become less frequent. A doorway closes. Somewhere within a courtyard, grain is poured into a storage jar, and the sound is briefly carried into the street. From the waterside comes one last ripple against a landing. The seller of dates covers the dark fruit with cloth. The barley measure is turned upside down. A toolmaker gathers the pieces from his mat and wraps them together. A final pot is lifted through a doorway. Empty baskets are stacked inside one another, their reeds brushing with a dry whisper. What remains of the day is gathered, counted, covered, and carried indoors. At the edge of the trading area, a merchant pauses beside a narrow workspace. He has not recorded every date sold, every portion of barley measured, or every bowl carried away. There was no need. Small everyday purchases could pass from one hand to another without a written account. But one delivery has been promised for later. Another customer will owe silver after the next season's work. Those agreements must last beyond this evening. On a low bench, a small piece of damp clay waits beneath a cloth. Beside it lies a reed stylus, cut to make careful impressions. The merchant lifts his lamp and carries it closer. Behind him, the market street grows still. The baskets are covered, the jars are sealed. The final footsteps pass between the cooling walls. Before him, the soft clay waits to receive a few quiet signs. Chapter 4. Scribes and Clay Tablets. The merchant sets the small lamp on a shelf built into the brick wall. Its flame leans for a moment, then steadies, casting a warm circle over the low bench. Beyond that circle, the room remains quiet and dim. A few sealed jars stand against one wall. Baskets rest on a woven reed mat. Near the doorway, the fading sounds of the market pass like a distant murmur. You step inside with the merchant and the scribe who has come to help him. The workspace is not large. It might be called an office, though it also serves as a storeroom and a place for counting goods. Here, in the gentle light of one lamp, ordinary business is given a form that may last beyond the evening. The merchant lifts the cloth from the waiting clay. The piece beneath it is cool and moist, small enough to fit comfortably in one hand. Clay is familiar throughout Babylonia. It shapes the bricks of walls and houses, the vessels of households, and the tablets on which words are recorded. In this room, a little earth and water will become a quiet aid to memory. The scribe wets his fingertips and presses the clay gently. He smooths one side against the bench, turns it over, and rounds the edges. Slowly, the tablet becomes like a small cushion in his palm, broad enough for several lines of writing. Beside him lies the stylus. It is a short length of reed, cut at the end so that it leaves a wedge-shaped impression when pressed into soft clay. A stylus might also be made of wood, but this one comes from the reeds that grow beside the waterways. The scribe does not draw flowing lines. He does not drag the point across the surface as though writing with ink. Instead, he places the cut end of the stylus against the clay and presses. A small wedge appears. He turns his wrist and presses again. A second wedge meets the first at an angle. Several more follow, arranged in a pattern he has practiced many times. Each movement is quiet, little more than a soft tap and the faint release of the reed from the damp surface. This system of writing is now called cuneiform, a word meaning wedge-shaped. Its signs are made from these impressed wedges. Some are upright, some are horizontal, others lean at careful angles. Together they form signs that a trained reader can recognize. Cuneiform is a writing system, not a single language. Over many centuries it was used to record more than one language. In 6th century Babylonia, it was used principally for Babylonian Akkadian, the language of many legal, commercial, administrative, and scholarly documents. Trained scribes also copied and studied Sumerian, an older language that remained important in scholarship and learned tradition. The tablet taking shape tonight is modest. It concerns a delayed delivery of sesame oil. The merchant has already agreed upon the amount and the value. The jars will come later, but the promise is being recorded now, so that memory does not have to carry every detail alone. The tablet does not need to tell a long story. It records the names, the goods, the quantity, the obligation, and the agreed time. A document such as this may also include witnesses. Its date may be identified by the year of the reigning king, giving the agreement a recognized place and time. The merchant watches as the signs appear. Perhaps he recognizes his own name. Perhaps he knows familiar marks for quantities or goods. Literacy in Babylon exists at different levels. One person may recognize a small number of useful signs. Another may read common records. A practical scribe may prepare receipts, loans, leases, and accounts. A more extensively trained scholar may copy complex literary, mathematical, ritual, or astronomical texts. Not all Babylonians are literate, and not every literate person possesses the same knowledge. The ability to understand a familiar account is not the same as the learning required to preserve an old composition or examine generations of celestial observations. And not every clay tablet is a book. Many tablets are practical records. They preserve contracts, loans, receipts, leases, property transfers, deliveries, and accounts. Some carry letters from one person to another. Others contain scholarly works, rituals, mathematics, or careful observations of the sky. Clay can hold the learned and the ordinary alike. A difficult scholarly text and a brief receipt may both begin beneath the same kind of stylus, with a few quiet wedges pressed into a moist surface. The scribe pauses. He lifts the tablet toward the lamp and examines it at an angle. The little impressions catch the light unevenly, each hollow holding a delicate shadow. After a moment, he lowers the tablet and adds another line. When an agreement is important, witnesses may be named. A seal may also be pressed or rolled into the clay. Its carved surface leaves an impression that can help identify the person connected with the document. In some cases, fingernail impressions serve as personal marks. Names, witnesses, seals, and other impressions help confirm that those involved have acknowledged what has been written. Some legal or private tablets receive another layer of protection. A thin covering of clay can be placed around the completed document like an envelope. An enclosed duplicate can then remain beneath the outer clay, protected from easy alteration. If a question arises later, the envelope may be broken and the inner tablet examined. Tonight, no clay envelope is needed. The record is straightforward, and the people involved are known to one another. Even so, the scribe reads the short text aloud in a low, even voice. The merchant listens without interrupting. When the reading is finished, he gives a small nod. The spoken words settle into the room beside the lamp flame. Reading aloud allows those present to hear what the signs contain. A person who cannot read the tablet easily, or cannot read it at all, can still listen and confirm the agreement. Writing belongs within a wider world of speech, witnesses, memory, and trust. The scribe turns the tablet once more. He makes a brief notation along one edge, taking care not to press his hand against the fresh signs. His movements have the quiet confidence of long practice. Learning such work requires time. Many scribal exercise tablets survive from Neo-Babylonian Babylonia. Some show repeated signs and copied lines. Some preserve the uncertain work of learners, with wedges that are less even than those made by an experienced hand. Through repetition, a student could learn to shape the signs, copy words, remember lists, and work through names or calculations. Large numbers of these exercises have been recovered around the temple of Nabu, the god associated with writing and scholarship. Nabu offers a gentle connection between the practical record being made here and the broader world of Babylonian learning. Writing serves merchants and households, but it also supports temples, institutions, rituals, mathematics, and the patient keeping of knowledge. Still, it would be misleading to imagine a single standardized public school system spread evenly throughout the city. Scribal training probably took several forms. Some learners may have been taught within households where writing was already practiced. Others may have worked as apprentices beside experienced scribes. Instruction could also take place in settings connected with temples or other institutions. The path into scribal work was not the same for everyone. Family, profession, opportunity, and social ties could shape what a learner studied and how far that study continued. The practical scribe who prepared a receipt did not necessarily have the same training as the scholar who copied a demanding text. An older term, eduba, is often translated as tablet house. It belongs especially to earlier scribal traditions and should be used cautiously when imagining this 6th century setting. The places of instruction were likely varied, just as the skills of their learners were varied. On the low bench, the evening's work is now complete. The clay remains soft enough to mark. The merchant does not stack the tablet among older records. Instead, the scribe carries it carefully to a clean reed mat on a shelf where air can pass around it. There the tablet will rest and dry. Small tablets like this one need not be deliberately fired in an oven or kiln. Many could simply be dried and stored. Some tablets that survive today became hard because fire swept through the buildings where they were kept, accidentally baking the clay. Others endured through long burial. Their survival does not mean that every Babylonian document was routinely fired like pottery. For now, this tablet remains fragile. A careless thumb could blur a name, water could soften an edge, but if it is left undisturbed, it will grow firmer and can eventually join the merchant's other records. The scribe wipes damp clay from the stylus with a fold of cloth. The merchant covers the unused clay so that it may remain workable for another day. The lamp flame moves slightly as someone passes near the doorway, then becomes steady once more. Neither man treats the completed task as remarkable. A delayed delivery has been recorded, an amount has been fixed, a promise has been given a physical shape. The quiet work of the city has produced one more small tablet. You look at the fresh signs resting in the lamplight. They are tiny arrangements of shadow pressed into clay, made through earth, water, reed, and practiced thought. Through signs such as these, goods can be counted, agreements remembered, letters carried, and knowledge preserved beyond a single voice or evening. Soon the scribe gathers his few tools. The merchant checks the shelf one final time, making sure the new tablet lies flat upon the mat. Then he lowers the lamp and walks toward the doorway. Outside, the air has cooled further. The last market lamps glow behind half-closed doors. Footsteps have become rare. Somewhere, a basket is moved across a floor, and dry reeds brush softly together. Then the sound fades, leaving only the stillness between the brick walls. You leave the little workspace while the tablet rests behind you. Its damp surface is no longer being touched. The wedges remain just as the stylus left them, holding names, quantities, and a promise that will wait for another day. Ahead, a narrow lane passes between walls of cooling brick. The lamplight grows dimmer with each step. From somewhere beyond the houses comes another sound, steady and low. It is the sound of water moving through the city. You follow it along the quiet lane. Behind you, clay begins slowly to dry. Before you, the evening deepens, and the lane bends gently toward the canal. Chapter 5. Along the Canal. The lane bends gently toward the canal. At first, the water remains hidden behind the brick walls. You hear it before you see it, a soft and steady movement beneath the quieter sounds of evening. Then the houses draw back, the lane widens, and a narrow watercourse appears beneath the deepening sky. This is not the broad Euphrates, though its water belongs to the same living system. It is a smaller canal, one of many channels carrying the river's influence through Babylon and across the surrounding plain. Its banks are made of packed earth, strengthened in places with reeds, timber, or brick. Along one side runs a worn path, shaped by years of footsteps, between houses, fields, workshops, and landing places. The dust of the market begins to fade from the air. Here the smells are of wet earth and cut reeds, with a trace of mud cooling after the day's heat. Long stems grow near the water's edge. Their narrow leaves brush together whenever the evening breeze passes through them. Water moves softly beside you. The canal reflects the last pale light in broken pieces. A patch of sky trembles upon its surface, and then grows still. Small ripples reach the bank and disappear into the dark mud. A boat is moored nearby. Its rounded side presses gently against the bank, then eases away, over and over, following the movement of the water. A rope made from twisted reeds holds it to a wooden post. The rope is simple, but strong enough for its quiet task. Two people stand beside the boat, finishing their work. One lifts a coil of rope from the floor of the vessel, while the other checks the knot at the post. Their motions are slow and familiar. There is little need for speech. They draw the boat closer to the bank, test the line, and place a woven covering over what remains of the cargo. Earlier, this vessel may have brought jars, grain, or baskets of dates into the city. Another boat might carry bundles of reeds, lengths of timber from a distant region, pottery packed in straw, or stacks of brick. Heavy and bulky goods can often travel more efficiently by water than by road. A boat bears its load along the canal, while a cart must pull against dust, ruts, and the weight of every turning wheel. Not every channel is deep enough for boats, and not every canal serves the same purpose. Some help carry people and cargo, some guide water toward fields, some help drain water away. Others connect neighborhoods or join smaller channels to larger ones. Their usefulness changes with their width and depth, with the season, with their maintenance, and with the changing behavior of the Euphrates. The boat beside you sits low but steady. One worker steps ashore and presses a heel into the bank beside the mooring post. The earth is firm. Satisfied, the worker brushes mud from one hand. Together, the two gather their tools and walk toward a row of low buildings. The canal continues onward, carrying a wavering reflection of the sky. In southern Mesopotamia, rainfall is too scarce and unreliable to sustain agriculture on its own. Fields of barley and sesame, garden plots, date palms, and grazing land all depend heavily upon water drawn from rivers and carefully directed across the plain. The river provides the water, but human labor gives that water its paths. From the Euphrates, water may enter a major canal. From there it may pass into smaller branches, then into narrow channels and field ditches. Low boundaries of earth divide one cultivated area from another. Openings can be cleared or closed so that water reaches one plot and then another. In some places, a simple regulator, something that might be described as a sluice gate, helps control the flow. Yet not every channel has an elaborate gate. Often a bank of packed earth, a carefully placed inlet, and the knowledge of people familiar with the ground are enough to guide the water where it is needed. As you walk, you notice one such opening in the canal bank. It is narrow and for the moment closed with earth and bundled reeds. Beyond it, a shallow ditch leads between dark garden plots. In daylight, someone may open the passage and allow water to enter. Later, when enough has passed through, the opening can be closed again. Water must be guided. It must also be watched and cared for. Left entirely to itself, a canal slowly changes. Mud settles upon the bottom as silt. Reeds thicken along the edges. Banks soften where water, animals, and passing feet wear them down. A small opening may grow wider, while an inlet may become blocked. A channel that nourishes a field in one season may carry too little water in another, unless people return to clear and repair it. Farther along the path, 3 workers are completing a modest task at the embankment. One holds a small lamp, while the others press fresh earth into a worn place above the waterline. A flat wooden tool rests nearby. Cut reeds lie in a short bundle, ready to help strengthen the soil. They are not building a grand structure. They are simply tending a weak patch before leaving for the night. Such work is repeated throughout the landscape. Reeds must be cleared, silt must be removed, embankments must be repaired, inlets must be maintained, and unwanted breaches must be closed. These tasks may involve landholders, local officials, temple or palace institutions, and groups of organized laborers. Kings celebrate canal building and restoration in royal inscriptions, presenting such work as a source of fertile land and abundant water. Yet the continuing life of a canal also depends upon countless ordinary acts. A bank is checked, a ditch is cleared, a rope is secured, an inlet is opened at the proper time. The workers finish smoothing the fresh earth. One examines the repaired place in the fading light. Another gathers the cut reeds and lifts the wooden tool. Then all 3 follow the canal path toward the houses, their lamp becoming a small amber point in the dusk. Water moves softly beside you. Its presence makes cultivation possible, but irrigation must be balanced with drainage. If land receives too much water, or if moisture cannot drain away, salts naturally present in the soil and water may remain behind as evaporation draws the water upward. Over many seasons, those salts can accumulate. In time, they may make some crops more difficult to grow. This is a long-term agricultural concern, not an immediate crisis on a single night. It belongs to the patient knowledge of the land. Farmers must consider when to water, how much water to guide, where it may drain, and how the soil changes over time. Here, river, canal, ditch, field, labor, and season all belong together. The canal is valuable, but its water should not be mistaken for clean drinking water. It passes fields, boats, animals, and activities above it, and settlements as it moves through the landscape. Its purpose is not singular. It may support irrigation in one place, transport in another, and drainage farther on. No single channel needs to perform every task. You continue beneath the first visible stars. The level of this watercourse will not always be as it is tonight. It rises and falls with the season, with the Euphrates, and with the condition of channels farther upstream. A boat that travels easily at one time may sit too deep at another. A shallow branch may become difficult to navigate. Clearing can restore a passage, while gathered silt can slowly narrow it again. Even the map of the waterways is not fixed forever. Rivers shift across the plain. Canals are abandoned, reopened, redirected, or replaced. Long after this evening has passed, scholars will find traces of ancient channels in the land and references to waterways on clay tablets. Yet the route and name of every canal will not always be certain. Water changes its course. Earth gathers over older paths. Cities build and rebuild upon the ground beneath them. For now, this canal has a clear place in the evening. It carries water past houses and gardens. It offers a route for boats. It cools the nearby air. It gives reeds a place to grow and holds the reflected sky between its banks. Behind you, the last sounds of the market have disappeared. No sellers call across the lanes now. No scales touch stone weights. In the merchant's workspace, the little clay tablet rests upon its mat, slowly becoming firm. The signs pressed into its surface remain still, waiting for another day. Ahead, lamps glow in wall niches and behind doorways. The canal curves beside a line of houses. Their outer walls are plain, made to shelter the rooms within, rather than display them to the lane. Above, flat roofs hold the final warmth of the day. A faint scent of bread and cooked onions drifts through the cooling air. At the bend, the canal turns away, slipping behind reeds and shadow. Its sound remains, even when the water can no longer be seen. Softly, steadily, it continues through the city. You enter a narrower lane between high brick walls. The market dust is gone now. The air carries only the sense of cooling earth, distant cooking, and reeds beside the unseen water. A wooden door opens ahead. Warm lamplight falls across the ground, making a quiet golden shape upon the bricks. Someone within has been waiting for your arrival. You cross the threshold, leaving the canal to continue its passage through Babylon. Beyond the door lies the calmer enclosure of a household courtyard, where cooling brick, stored jars, woven cloth, and familiar voices gather around a square of open sky. Chapter 6. Courtyards of Brick and Shade. The wooden door closes gently behind you, and the narrow lane seems to withdraw. Fading footsteps, distant wheels, and murmured greetings remain outside the thick wall. Here within the house, every sound grows softer. A short passage turns before opening into the courtyard. The bend shelters the rooms within from the direct gaze of anyone passing in the street. Then the space widens, and above it appears a quiet square of evening sky. The first stars are not yet bright. Overhead the light is pale, still touched by the last blue of twilight. Below, a small clay lamp rests in a niche. Its flame casts a warm glow across the plastered walls and reddish brick. Cooler air moves down through the open courtyard. It brings a trace of water from the nearby canal and carries away some of the warmth gathered during the day. You pause and let your eyes adjust. The house is arranged around this central open space. Several rooms lead from it, their doorways appearing as calm, dark rectangles in the lamplight. Houses with plans like this are known from excavations in Babylon, especially in the district now called Merkis. Many of the houses uncovered there were large and well-built, and they may have belonged to prosperous residents. They offer a valuable view of domestic life, but they cannot represent every home in Babylon. The city held people of many circumstances. Some lived in substantial courtyard houses, others lived in smaller or differently arranged buildings. And not every residence followed the same plan. This household is fictional, modest, and comfortable. Its courtyard is broad enough for several people to work without crowding one another. The rooms around it hold supplies, mats, tools, and possessions gathered over many years. A Babylonian household could include relatives, dependents, servants, apprentices, and enslaved people. Yet no single arrangement belonged to every home. Here, on this quiet evening, no one stops to define every relationship. Familiar tasks continue, and the household settles into its nightly rhythm. Near one wall, someone folds a length of woolen cloth. The cloth is lifted carefully, its edges aligned, and then it is laid inside a wooden chest. Its plain, closely woven surface catches the lamplight for a moment, before the lid is lowered. Textile production, including spinning and weaving, was an important part of Babylonian life, and of the wider Mesopotamian economy. Wool could be cleaned, spun into thread, woven, repaired, stored, and exchanged. Large institutions organized textile work on a considerable scale, while spinning and other tasks could also be part of household routines. Still, it would be unwise to imagine a full loom in every house. Some households may have kept weaving equipment, while others obtained finished cloth or carried out only part of the work. There is a spindle, tucked into a basket, a little wool, and a few loose fibers clinging to the rim. Beside the chest stands a low stool. Its wooden legs are worn smooth from being carried between rooms. A reed mat rests against the wall, rolled and tied with cord. Another has been spread over part of the courtyard floor, providing a clean place for bowls and baskets. Wood, reeds, cloth, and plant fibers preserve poorly. Much of what once furnished an ancient house has disappeared, yet archaeological remains and written evidence suggest a domestic world of mats, stools, low tables, chests, beds, and sleeping platforms. A room did not need to contain much furniture to be useful. A few movable objects allowed a space to change with the hours. One room might hold stored goods during the day and become a resting place at night. Another might be used for preparing food, sorting wool, repairing tools, eating, or receiving a visitor. Modern categories such as dining room, bedroom, and workshop do not always fit neatly here. Purpose follows need. Mats can be unrolled, stools can be carried, baskets can be moved into a dry corner. At night, bedding can be laid down where daytime work has ended. The courtyard is equally adaptable. It admits light and air to the surrounding rooms, especially because the plain outer walls have few openings. There are no broad glass windows facing the lane. The house turns inward instead, toward the sheltered brightness of the open sky. During the day, grain might be measured here. Wool might be spun, vegetables sorted, vessels washed, or meals prepared. Someone might sit in the shade and repair a basket. Children might remain close to older members of the household. A visitor might rest on a mat while quiet work continued nearby. This evening, most of that work is ending. Someone kneels beside 3 large ceramic jars arranged against the wall. Each has a rounded body and a narrower mouth, useful for protecting what is stored inside. One contains barley. A hand reaches beneath its cover and stirs the upper layer, checking the grain. It makes a dry whisper against the clay. Another vessel holds dates, dark and sweet, packed closely together. A smaller jar contains liquid and is covered against dust. Nearby baskets hold onions, reed cord, and small household supplies. Baskets are light and convenient, though they rarely survive for archaeologists to recover. Ceramic vessels are heavier, but their durable clay bodies leave a clearer trace of household storage. Jars could hold grain, dates, oil, water, and many other necessities. Some containers could be sealed with clay around a stopper or fastening. A seal might be pressed or rolled into the soft surface, leaving a distinctive design. Containers could also be marked or labeled with information about their contents, quantity, or ownership. Not every household vessel required such formality. Often, familiarity was enough. The people who live here know which jar holds grain which contains dates, and which must remain away from the fire. The barley is covered again. A small weight is settled on top. The motion is quiet and practiced. Around the courtyard, pale plaster softens the walls. Most residential walls were built from sun-dried mud brick and coated with clay or gypsum plaster. Earth was mixed with water, shaped into bricks, and dried beneath the sun. The finished bricks were well suited to a region where building stone and large timbers were not abundant. The plaster created a smoother, lighter surface, but it required care. Near the floor, a hand brushes dust from a narrow crack that will soon need attention. Earthen walls could stand for many years when properly maintained, yet they asked for regular repairs. Worn surfaces were patched, floors were renewed, weathered places were covered again. Where moisture threatened a wall or floor, builders could use baked brick. Hardened in a kiln, it resisted water better than sun-dried brick. Bitumen, a dark and sticky material, could also be used as mortar or waterproofing. Baked brick and bitumen were particularly useful near drains, foundations, wet floors, and other places exposed to dampness. A house might therefore combine materials according to need. Sun-dried brick formed much of the structure. Plaster protected and brightened the walls. Baked brick and bitumen guarded places where water posed a greater risk. The evening air continues to move through the courtyard. Near the ground, the walls already feel cool. Higher up, they still hold a little of the day's warmth beneath the plaster. You look toward the roofline. Across the rooms, wooden or palm beams support smaller branches or slats. Reed matting lies above them, covered with packed mud. Together these layers form the flat roof overhead. Like the walls, a mud roof needed regular care. Weather could soften damaged places, while wind and use could loosen the surface. Fresh mud had to be spread, pressed down, and sealed when necessary. A neglected roof might begin to leak. A well-maintained roof became a strong and useful part of the home. Some Babylonian houses had upper rooms, and some may have risen to a second story. This should not be assumed for every residence. In this house, a simple stair climbs beside the courtyard wall. From below, you can see only the first steps and the dark edge of the roof beyond. For now, the upper space waits beneath the growing stars. Another lamp is prepared near a doorway. A small amount of oil is poured into its shallow clay body. The wick is adjusted. The flame rises, wavers once, and then settles. Its light reaches the jars and baskets, the low stool and wooden chest, the rolled mat, and folded wool. Shadows move gently across the pale plaster. The household draws inward around these ordinary things. One person carries a basket into a side room, another shakes dust from a mat and spreads it flat. A curtain across a doorway stirs in the moving air. Beyond the walls, the canal continues through the neighborhood. Its sound is almost hidden now beneath the small rhythms of the courtyard. There is the quiet touch of clay against brick, the rustle of reeds, and the soft footfall of someone crossing the floor. Then from near the household fire comes a gentle bubbling. A clay pot has been warming above a bed of coals. When its lid is lifted, steam rises into the cooling air. The scent of onion and herbs spreads slowly across the courtyard, followed by the mild, comforting fragrance of grain. The jars are covered, the wool has been folded away. The lamp burns steadily in its niche, while the last tasks of the day are set aside. Around the open square of sky, the brick walls continue to cool. Bowls are brought out, the mat is straightened, the low stool is moved nearer to the fire, and as the scent from the clay pot gathers beneath the evening air, the household comes together for its meal. Chapter 7. An Evening Meal. Before anyone reaches for the bread, water is poured into a shallow basin. The basin is made of clay, broad enough for 2 hands, with a rim worn smooth by long use. One member of the household tips a small jug while another washes. Water slips over fingers and palms, then falls with a quiet patter. A cloth is offered. The gesture is simple and familiar. There is water after the dusty streets, a place upon the woven mat, and a share of whatever food the household has prepared. "You are welcome," your host says. No further ceremony is needed. You settle near the low glow of the lamp. Around you, the courtyard walls hold the last warmth of daylight. The open square of sky above has deepened from pale blue to a soft and even gray. A thread of cooking smoke rises from the household fire, curls once beneath the open air, and slowly disappears. The meal is arranged in clay vessels placed within easy reach. There are no separate courses, no forks, and no identical settings for each person. Food is shared from bowls and dishes. Bread serves not only as nourishment, but also as a useful way to gather a little stew. Hands have been washed, and everyone finds a comfortable place upon the mat. A round loaf is brought forward. Its surface is browned and uneven, carrying the warm fragrance of toasted grain. It is not sliced. One person breaks it with both hands, then passes the pieces around. Bread in Babylonia could be prepared in several ways. Some was baked in clay ovens, perhaps against a heated inner wall. Some could be cooked upon a hot surface. Other forms were made by methods suited to the household, the kind of flour, and the time available. There was no single Babylonian loaf, just as there was no single Babylonian meal. This bread began with grain and steady labor. Earlier barley kernels were crushed and ground between stones. One stone remained below while another moved over it, again and again, reducing the grain to meal or flour. The work made a low scraping sound, repeated in a rhythm familiar to many households across the region. Grinding was physical, repetitive work, often performed within the home. It returned as regularly as the meals themselves. The movement of stone across stone, the gathering of flour, and the careful protection of stored grain were all part of the household's continuing routine. Barley was one of the central crops of Babylonia. It could become bread, porridge, soup, or a grain-based drink. It could also be stored, measured, distributed, and recorded. In the fields beyond the city, its growth depended upon canals and carefully guided water. Here in the courtyard, after harvesting, drying, winnowing, grinding, mixing, and baking, the grain has become something warm enough to break between your fingers. Beside the bread rests a small bowl of dates. Their skins shine darkly in the lamplight. They are soft and sweet, with a dense richness that needs little preparation. Date palms were deeply important to the agriculture, economy, and diet of Babylonia. Their fruit could be eaten, stored, pressed, or used to sweeten other foods. Like barley, dates connected the household table to the irrigated land beyond the brick walls. You take one and draw away the stone at its center. The fruit is tender, carrying something of the sunlit groves from which it came. The main bowl holds a gently steaming stew. Lentils may have been used, or perhaps chickpeas. Both belong comfortably within the food traditions of the region. Onion has softened into the broth. Greens and herbs add small traces of color, while a little sesame oil glimmers upon the surface whenever the lamplight moves. The precise recipe cannot be known. Thousands of clay tablets survive from ancient Mesopotamia, and among them are a few remarkable tablets containing recipes. Yet the famous surviving examples were written several centuries before this Neo-Babylonian evening. Their instructions probably reflect skilled or elite cooking rather than the ordinary supper of every household. Those tablets can tell us something about ingredients and culinary possibilities. They cannot give us the exact contents of this fictional family's pot, so the stew before you is a careful reconstruction. It is modest, plausible, and shaped by what is known more broadly. Legumes, onions, leeks, garlic, greens, herbs, sesame oil, dairy products, fish, and meat are all attested in Mesopotamian food traditions. Bread, porridges, soups, and stews are equally at home in this setting. The combinations would have changed with wealth, occupation, season, age, household resources, personal taste, and custom. A worker receiving institutional rations might eat differently from a merchant's family. A child's portion might differ from an adult's. A prosperous household preparing for guests might serve foods that were absent from an ordinary evening meal. There was never one diet shared by every resident of Babylon. Tonight, however, the food is uncomplicated. The stew is ladled into smaller bowls, although some continue to reach toward the shared vessel. You fold a piece of bread and use it to gather a mouthful. The legumes are soft, onion lends sweetness, herbs bring a quiet fragrance, and sesame oil gives the broth a smooth finish. But they were not necessarily a feature of every meal in every household or century. Tonight, the drink is poured modestly into clay cups. Some choose beer, while others take water. Both belong naturally at the table. There is no need to claim that beer was always safer than water. Households used and valued water, drawing, storing, and serving it with practical care. For a while there is quiet conversation. Someone remarks that the bread browned quickly against the heat. Another asks whether more stew should be brought from the pot. A child reaches toward the dates, pauses, then chooses the smallest one. The older woman beside the lamp places a second piece of bread near your hand. "Take it," she says gently. You do. Hospitality is made from such small offerings. A basin of water, a place upon a mat, bread passed from hand to hand, a shared bowl, a modest drink, and enough lamplight to see the faces gathered nearby. There is no display. There is only the warmth of inclusion. The meal continues at an unhurried pace. Clay touches clay with a muted sound. Bread absorbs the last traces of broth. A few herbs cling to the curve of a bowl. The dates grow fewer, leaving their smooth stones collected near one side of the dish. The familiar flavors settle gently together. Toasted grain and soft dates, cooked onion and green herbs, a little sesame oil, a small portion of fish. Each has followed its own path into the courtyard from fields, groves, gardens, canals, store jars, grinding stones, and cooking vessels. Nothing needs to be hurried. Around the courtyard, the house has become still. Storage jars rest beneath their covers. Folded textiles remain in the side room. The small lamp flame bends as cooler air descends through the open square above, then rises straight again. Someone takes the last piece of onion from a shared dish. Another gathers a little stew with the edge of the bread. Conversation fades into pauses that feel comfortable rather than empty. Beyond the household walls, the neighborhood is quieting too. A faint footstep passes along the lane. Somewhere farther away, water continues through a canal. Within the courtyard, the smaller rhythms of the evening remain. A cup is set down. A reed mat shifts. Coals settle softly beneath the cooking pot. When everyone has eaten enough, the vessels are gathered. A small quantity of stew remains and is covered rather than wasted. Crumbs are brushed together. Water is poured once more for the hands, carrying away a faint sheen of sesame oil and the fragrance of herbs. The work of the meal does not end with the final mouthful. Bowls must be rinsed, the cooking pot tended, grain protected for another day, and the mat shaken clean. Yet these tasks are performed without haste. One person carries the cups away. Another wipes the basin's smooth rim. The remainder of the broken loaf is wrapped and placed aside. The fish dish is removed, and the date stones are gathered. The lamp continues to burn in its niche, making the shadows of hands pass softly across the brick. These ordinary tasks have their own reassuring order. Food has been prepared, offered, shared, and stored. Water has been poured. Bread has passed around the mat. The household has come together at the close of the day, and now it gently separates again into the smaller movements of evening. The courtyard remains warm below, still holding the heat stored in its brick walls. Above it, the roof has begun to catch the cooler air. Near one corner, simple steps rise against the wall, steep and narrow, leading toward the upper level. In another house, there might be a ladder-like stair, or a different arrangement entirely. Here, one hand rests lightly against the plaster as the first person begins to climb. The lamp stays behind in its niche. The cleared bowls wait near the basin, and the last scent of toasted grain lingers close to the wall. From the rooftop opening comes a faint breath of evening. It carries the softness of cooling brick, distant water, and the first clear darkness above Babylon. Chapter 8. Gardens above the courtyard. The steps are narrow beneath your feet, each one shaped from brick and softened by years of use. As you rise above the courtyard, the sounds of the household begin to change. The quiet rinsing of bowls remains below. A cup touches the edge of a basin. Someone folds the meal mat and places it beside the wall. With every step, those small domestic sounds grow fainter, and the open evening draws nearer. At the top, you step onto a roof that is nearly flat. It is not perfectly level. A slight slope helps occasional rainwater find its way toward an edge or drain, rather than gathering in pools. The surface beneath you is packed mud, supported by the structure below. Such a roof can be strong and useful, but it requires regular care. Rain is uncommon through the long, dry summer. When it does come, however, water can wear away the surface. Cracks need to be filled. Soft places need fresh mud. Worn areas must be pressed smooth again. A household cares for its roof much as it cares for a wall, a storage jar, or any other familiar and well-used thing. The roof has held the sunlight throughout the day. Now it releases that warmth slowly beneath the soles of your feet. Above, the air is cooler than it was in the enclosed courtyard. It moves over neighboring walls and crosses the roof with faint traces of water, dust, reeds, and distant cooking fires. Around you, other roofs stand at different heights. Some are partly hidden behind low walls at their edges. On one roof, a cloth hangs to dry in the remaining light. On another, bundles of reeds rest against a wall. Farther away, a seated figure turns a spindle, drawing wool into thread. The roofs and upper spaces of Babylonian houses can serve many purposes. They may offer evening air and light, a little privacy, room for drying cloth or food, and a place to continue household work after the rooms below have grown close and warm. In suitable weather, a roof may also become a quiet place to sit, speak softly, or rest. Not every house is arranged in the same way, and not every rooftop is used alike. Babylon contains grand residences, modest homes, workshops, storerooms, and buildings fitted closely along narrow lanes. What you see here belongs only to this household. It is a roof kept swept and repaired, with a reed mat placed near the wall, and a woven screen tied between two upright supports. The screen moves gently in the breeze. During the day, it can cast a narrow band of shade. Its exact arrangement is part of the household's own design, adapted to this roof and this season. Reeds are familiar materials in Mesopotamia. They grow where water gathers, and they can be bundled, woven, carried, and shaped into mats, screens, baskets, and other useful objects. Near the screen stand several pottery containers. One holds water, another contains dry soil and a small herb with narrow leaves. A third supports a low plant, whose green stems lean toward the open sky. These are not extensive plantings. They are modest enough to be tended by hand, and hardy enough to endure the bright sun. You kneel beside them. The soil in the nearest vessel is dry at the surface, though it remains slightly cool beneath. Someone from the household brings a small cup of water up from the courtyard. Every drop has been carried. It was drawn from a jar below, lifted along the steep steps, and poured carefully around the waiting roots. The simple labor of carrying this water helps explain why a roof filled with deep planting beds would be difficult to maintain. Soil is heavy, particularly when it is wet. Water adds still more weight, and excess moisture could harm a packed mud roof. Spilled water might soften a carefully tended surface. Added weight could place strain on the building below. A few pots can be moved, inspected, and watered with care. Mature trees and deep beds of earth would require much stronger support, as well as dependable ways of raising and draining large amounts of water. And so the plants before you remain small. One may be a useful herb for cooking. Another may offer a pleasant fragrance. A little greenery may be kept simply because it is agreeable to see. Direct evidence for domestic rooftop planting in 6th century Babylon is limited. Leaves, woven containers, shade mats, and ordinary household habits rarely leave a clear trace for archaeologists to find. These few pots are therefore best understood as a cautious possibility, rather than a certainty. Flat roofs were accessible in at least some buildings. Pottery containers were common. People cultivated herbs and other useful plants wherever water and suitable soil allowed. A few carefully tended plants could have stood on a roof like this one. Yet we cannot know that every detail before you once appeared in precisely this form. Beyond the house, the larger gardens of Mesopotamia depend upon a more generous supply of water. Date palms lift their feathered crowns above irrigated ground. Vegetables and herbs grow in watered plots. Orchards provide fruit and can offer smaller plants some shelter from the strongest sun. Formal gardens may be arranged beside temples, palaces, or wealthy estates. None of this greenery appears without patient effort. Channels must be cleared. Banks must be maintained. Water must be guided from a river or canal into smaller courses, and from those courses toward roots waiting in dry earth. The little cup tilts once more. Water darkens the soil in the pot and slowly disappears. For a moment, the scent of damp earth rises into the cooling air. From this modest gathering of pottery and leaves, your gaze travels toward the palace district. Babylon has long been connected in later memory with a much greater garden. It is remembered as the Hanging Gardens, imagined as broad terraces covered with trees, vines, and abundant greenery. Classical Greek and Roman writers associated a remarkable elevated garden with Babylon. Later tradition often linked it with Nebuchadnezzar II, the king responsible for much of Babylon's monumental rebuilding. Yet the famous garden remains one of the ancient world's unanswered questions. No surviving Babylonian royal inscription securely identifies such a monument. This absence is notable because Nebuchadnezzar left many inscriptions describing his building work, including palaces, temples, walls, and improvements to Babylon. Archaeologists have also found no structure in the city that is universally accepted as the Hanging Gardens. More than a century ago, the excavator Robert Coldaway proposed that a vaulted building near Babylon's southern palace might have supported the celebrated garden. Its heavy construction and unusual chambers seemed to him capable of carrying substantial weight, and a nearby well added to the suggestion. Other scholars have not been persuaded. The building's purpose remains debated, and it has not provided a settled answer. Some researchers have proposed that accounts of the Hanging Gardens may preserve memories of an impressive garden at Nineveh, an Assyrian city farther north, where evidence describes elaborate waterworks and planted royal landscapes. Others continue to consider possible locations within Babylon. Ancient writers worked at different times. They sometimes drew upon earlier sources, and descriptions could be copied, altered, or associated with new places as the centuries passed. For now, the location, form, and even the existence of the Hanging Gardens in Babylon cannot be stated with certainty. That uncertainty does not remove greenery from the city. It simply asks the imagination to move carefully. Babylon certainly knew date palms, orchards, vegetables, herbs, formal gardens, irrigation, and skilled water management. What remains uncertain is the enormous terraced wonder made famous by later tradition. Here, on this household roof, there are no forests lifted into the sky. There is only a small clay pot, a few leaves, a reed screen, and water carried upward in a cup. The scale is ordinary, and because it is ordinary, it settles naturally into the evening. Someone spreads a mat where the roof has begun to cool. Another person checks the packed mud near the edge, pressing a loose place smooth with the heel of a hand. The water container is moved back into the shade, and its mouth is covered against the dust. The last brightness in the west rests on the upper walls. Baked bricks in distant buildings hold a muted reddish color, while nearer surfaces fade toward brown and gray. The Euphrates cannot be seen clearly from this roof, but its presence can be felt in the movement of the air. Canals branch through the city and the surrounding land, carrying the river's water toward fields, gardens, basins, and working neighborhoods. Their faint coolness seems to travel between the houses. A date palm rises beyond a nearby wall. Its trunk is dark against the sky, and its crown still holds a trace of the remaining light. It grows from the ground where its roots can reach watered soil. From this roof, however, its upper leaves appear almost level with you. They stir softly in the evening breeze. For a moment, the palm seems to belong to this higher world of roofs, woven screens, and deepening sky. The household settles around you. Conversation becomes sparse. There is no need to fill the open air with words. A hand brushes one herb leaf, releasing a mild fragrance. The stem bends beneath the touch, then slowly returns to its place. Above the courtyard, the rooftop has become a room without a ceiling. Its walls are low. Its floor is still warm. Its farthest boundary is the darkening sky. Behind the reed screen, the breeze passes in a soft, steady rhythm. Below, storage jars stand in their niches. Washed bowls wait for morning. The courtyard walls quietly surrender the heat they gathered during the day. The first stars are visible now, faint but clear. Soon attention will turn upward toward them. For the moment, you remain beside the small containers where the damp earth grows darker in the dusk. Water has been carried up. The leaves have been tended. The roof beneath them has been checked and smoothed. Across Babylon, gardens both certain and uncertain settle into the night. There are orchards beside canals, herbs growing in watered plots, formal plantings within enclosed grounds, and the great elevated garden of later memory, still resting somewhere between history and tradition. And perhaps, on a carefully maintained roof such as this one, there are a few hardy green leaves in clay pots, moving gently in the cool night air.